Hello and welcome. This is False Start, a college football podcast for everyone and everyone else. I'm your host, John Buhler, lead writer, fansided.com. As you can see, once again, I am flying solo like a cup because Cody Williams, content director, fansided.com, is enjoying his last few days in Hawaii. The reason I'm recording this episode technically on a Saturday and I'm going to release in about 24 hours on a Sunday is that Monday through Thursday next week, all the FanSided full-time employees, both on .com, network, all over the place, are going to be meeting in Phoenix for our every other year conference. So I'm going to do this like the Monday episode, and then Cody will be back with me on the Friday episode for Thursday. In that episode, we're going to be doing some JLN. We're going to do some Antonio, probably some Every Rose Has Its Torn. But right now, we got to get started with our first and 15 with one simple question. Where's the money, Lebowski? Yes, Deion Sanders became the latest college football head coach to make $10 million annually. He joins a list of a handful of really great coaches in the sport right now who are essentially making that. You've got Kirby Smart making 13.2, Ryan Day making 12.5, Dabo Swinney making 11.5, Dan Lanning making 11 million, Steve Sarkisian making 10.1. Lincoln Riley, from what we've seen, because he's at a private school, is making 10.1. Kalen DeBoer is making 10.25. Bill Belichick and Deion Sanders are making 10. And Brian Kelly is essentially there at 9.9. So a really great list of coaches right there. I don't know if it's necessarily the 10 best coaches in all of college football, but they're all certainly worthy of being paid that highly. I mean, you look across the board, you have a six-time Super Bowl winning head coach in Bill Belichick, who's in the 70s. You've got three national championship winners right now, with Kirby Smart having won it in 21 and 22, Ryan Day this past year, and then Dabo Swinney in 16 and 18. And then you've got a handful of other coaches who've been to the playoff before, whether that would be Dan Lanning, Steve Sarkisian, Lincoln Riley, Kalen DeBoer, and Brian Kelly. It's interesting because like the top three highest paid coaches in college football have all won national championships in the playoff era. And I've got no problem with that. I've really got no problem with really any of these guys being at or above the $10 million threshold. Although I think Lincoln Riley largely sucks as a head coach, his track record with what he was able to do at Oregon stands out. Not at Oregon, at Oklahoma. I knew I was doing so good. Then I briefly screwed up. But yeah, he was doing so good for so long at Oklahoma that USC had to pay him that. Kalen DeBoer, that's kind of the entry level price to being the head coach of Alabama in the post Nick Saban era. But I think it's also interesting about this is like some of these schools are really ponying up. Like Bill Belichick and Deion Sanders are getting 10 million. They've coached at the Power Four level combined 2 years, and from schools that are not what I would consider college football blue bloods at all. North Carolina is a basketball blue blood, and then Colorado has won a national championship, but albeit before even the BCS, back when they split in '90 with Georgia Tech. Crazy times that happened. But yeah, I think that this is a pretty good move for Colorado. Just a few other thoughts here. Kind of have like a light show today. With Deion Sanders getting this, I think it's 10 million. There's like the annual escalator, so it's a 5-year deal for 54 million. Yes, so just a shade under 11 throughout the totality of it. This doesn't like prevent him from going to the NFL, but it certainly makes it that much more difficult. And I've said this before when talking with Cody on the show, that I think Deion Sanders really likes being in Colorado. A lot of his peers, who he has a lot of respect for, played for the iconic Bill McCartney. Obviously, he recently passed. And he's kind of trying to do the same or similar things that made Colorado so successful in the 80s and 90s that I think Sanders is going to do here in the 2020s and beyond. But like you won 9 games at Colorado. I mean, prior to last year, they had like one good season after Joel Klatt was their quarterback, and they had some scandal there with Kitty Nida and Gary Barnett and everything like that. So Colorado has the ability to take advantage of the power void at the top of the Big 12. They're back at a conference where they should have been anyway. Them going to the Pac-12 was horrible for them. It behooved Utah and it hurt them. again, it's the same sort of thing with for every team that leaves for another league in conference realignment, another one pays a price for it. Like it works out for one and it doesn't work out for the other. If you're the reluctant party or you're just doing a lateral move, it's not going to work out for you. But if you're moving for reasons to play at a higher level, that works out well, but you also can't alienate yourself and isolate yourself geographically. We saw Nebraska get hurt with that. We've seen West Virginia get hurt with that. And these are two programs that were elite at the Big 12 and the Big East before moving to the Big 10 and the Big 12, respectively. But yeah, this the amount of money that Deion Sanders is making here, I think is largely justified. He has a breath of fresh air for college football. And if you don't agree with me, well, he's heir to college football. He certainly brings in people who are casuals to the sport, who don't necessarily follow the sport as closely as you and I or anybody else does. Like I read somewhere that the people who are the biggest fans of college football are the ones who went to that school, whose parents went to that school, or live within 30 miles or 30 minutes of a college football program. So I went to Georgia. That's why I'm a big Georgia football fan. My parents didn't. I mean, my dad grew up in upstate New York. He like Syracuse was like the program back in the day. I guess he said growing up he liked Ohio State. Interestingly enough, my mom is from Columbus, so she grew up in a Buckeye territory. But really, like her thing was like she's okay with Ohio State. She just does not like Michigan. So maybe that's where I get it from. And then my sister went to Auburn, and my brother-in-law went to Wake Forest. My girlfriend went to Arizona State. Cody went to UNC Wilmington, but he supports North Carolina because that's where he grew up. That's his home state's team. And then his wife, Natalie, went to NC State and then Georgia Tech for her master's or her doctorate or whatever. She's a genius. She's doing all sorts of stuff with in Oppenheimer's lab up there in Los Alamos. She might work for the CIA. I'm not gonna edit that out, but that's my thought here. Look for that up in the episode when you look and listen to it, Cody. You're like, no, she doesn't, or maybe he'll just do like the winky face. But either way, to really tie a bow on it with Deion Sanders getting this contract extension, it had to happen. This is going to be a challenging year for the Buffaloes. They are losing Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter to the NFL draft. They're going to be top five picks, I would estimate. Maybe Shedeur Sanders falls a little bit, but I mean these are locks to go in the first round. You do have a quarterback who's had a bunch of starts in college football in Caden Salter, but that had been at the group of five level there at Liberty. So and then with the Big 12, it's still up for grabs. Colorado was a top four team in that league a year ago. They're the one team among the group of Arizona State, BYU, and Iowa State who I'm really down on, and someone's going to take their spot. This is all about, you know, making sure that you go to a bowl game again. You win 6 or 7 games. You see what you can do with Caden Salter. You hope that Julian Lewis is ready to play and Pat Shermer's offense sooner rather than later. And in a way, this kind of was the same sort of thing that I saw Oklahoma do. But that was with Joe Castiglione giving Brent Venables some ungodly raise for no reason. It does seem, though, that like Deion Sanders is pretty tight with his AD, Rick George. So, again, I'm in favor of this because, like, it's the price to pay for doing business with Deion. Let's say, for example, it doesn't work out with Hugh Freeze at Auburn. I would venture to guess Deion Sanders is probably the number one candidate there. If Mike Norvell has another terrible year there at Florida State, maybe Deion Sanders goes back to alma mater. Heck, if it ends poorly for Mike Gundy there at Oklahoma State, I mean, you would probably consider going to Stillwater and riding a pack of dogs and getting the T Boone Pickens trust working in your favor. But like this is what you got to do to give yourself a little bit allow you to sleep a little bit easier at night. Deion Sanders may not be at Colorado forever, but he's here for now and for the foreseeable future. So good for him and good for college football. And on that subject, we're going to move on to our next topic with some TIN 10. I was going to do one of these about like the best head coaches at their alma mater, but I want to wait for Cody to come back and do that. I did the heavy lifting so he can like look at it himself. But I wrote about this for fansided.com in my last article before I go to Phoenix and have 6 days off from writing. It's going to be an absolute breath of fresh air. Hopefully nothing crazy breaks while we're in Phoenix. I'm sure it will. But I thought about like who are the five next head coaches to make 10 million annually. And to make this a segment, like I wrote the five for this for the article. You can check that out at fanside.com. And then I added five more that you're only going to hear on this program. So I'm going to start with this. Work my way through this for y'all across the board. So at number one, I have Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. I'm going to go 10 to 1 for this just because, the teasing the 6 through 8, 6 through 10, excuse me. Marcus Freeman, again, this is a leverage play. He just took Notre Dame to a national championship game in his third year. Had with a roster that was good but not great. I think he really benefited from having Al Golden on his staff. Same with Mike Denbrock, but he seemed to have he seems to have found his role as the CEO type. Like he's not a meddler. He's not focusing on defense. He's not focusing on offense. He's empowering his coaches to make a difference. Notre Dame's got a lot of money. They don't have to split a lot of that with anybody from their playoff winnings because they're national independent. Whereas if Ohio State would have done it, they would have had to share some of that with the 17 other schools in the Big Ten. I think there's also the potential that there may be other NFL teams out there that may be interested in hiring Marcus Freeman. I know he had been tied to someone like the Chicago Bears for a while before they hired Ben Johnson. But yeah, Marcus Freeman could potentially work in the NFL. I think he's kind of an alpha male, but he's kind of cool, calm, and collected. It just kind of works there. And then I also think the fact is, let's just say Ryan Day maybe goes to the NFL. Maybe Ryan Day wants to retire. I mean, Marcus Freeman, Ohio State's his alma mater. There's going to be people that want to pay Marcus Freeman handsomely because he's a very handsome, dapper man. Easy choice for number one. Number two I have is Penn State head coach James Franklin. In my article, I kind of feel that he's going to use the openings as leverage to get more out of Penn State. And like I know he did that before with the opening at USC that ultimately went to Lincoln Riley. Maybe that opens up. Maybe he does it again. But if Penn State has a season that I think that they're going to, and they win 10 plus games, they make the playoff with the breeze, they win a couple of games, and they're essentially in the Final Four. Oh, he's going to make so much money. And I don't know if it's going to be justified as much as Marcus Freeman is, but like I think that's what happens when you have great coordinators on your staff. Jim Knowles is replacing Tom Allen, and then Andy Koltnecki, who I think should be a head coach already. He'll get there eventually. Like those are two rock star coordinators you've got working for you. So again, I think Penn State's in a really good spot. I think James Franklin's in a really good spot. I'm kind of shocked that he's not making 10 million annually already. At number three, I've got Josh Heupel. This one is very intriguing to me. Again, maybe I'm higher on Tennessee than most people this year. I have Tennessee as my third of four playoff teams out of the SEC behind Georgia and Texas, or Texas and Georgia, and then I had a South Carolina. Look, Josh Heupel is going to win about 10 games every year at Tennessee. They have an incredibly easy schedule this year. I think they play Syracuse in the non-conference. They get Georgia at home as long as you don't lose to Arkansas and you hang tough versus the Alabamas and the Floridas on your schedule, then you're going to be in great shape. But also, I think the big thing is you're hosting your alma mater in Oklahoma at Neyland. And if it hits the fan there for Brent Venables, then you got to ask yourself this. Is Oklahoma going to finally play mea culpa and bring Josh Heupel back? I mean, nobody hates their alma mater more than Josh Heupel. So it's going to take a pretty penny. But also, do you think Jimmy Haslam is going to want to let Josh Heupel leave? I mean, Tennessee Athletics is firing in all cylinders. I mean, they're going to the Elite Eight now under Rick Barnes. Their baseball team's been in the College World Series a lot of late. And then Tennessee just made the playoff after knocking on the door the last couple of years. So I think that Josh Heupel is going to use the potential Oklahoma vacancy as a way to make more money. I think that's the only job he would leave Tennessee for. My only concern is I don't think he's a top 10 head coach. He's somewhere in the 11 to 15 range because I think his offense is very air raid centric. It's very gimmicky. It doesn't translate to the NFL. That's why a lot of their quarterbacks just you haven't seen Hendon Hooker amount to much. You obviously the idea of Joe Milton continues to fascinate people, and then the receivers just can't get open. So, but Josh Heupel is going to use another great season and the potential opening at Oklahoma to his advantage. At number four, this is a bit of a shot in the dark. I'm going to go with the Arizona State podcast favorite head coach, Kenny Dillingham. Look, this is a bit of a reach because he's only been there for 2 years, but he just had Arizona State go 11-3, win the Big 12 their first season there after being picked to finish last in the 3-9 season. Pretty much everybody but Cam Scatterby returns. You still have Marcus Arroyo on your coaching staff, and you still got Sam Levitt under center. This is going to be a great year for Arizona State, I would think. Well, Kenny Dillingham is my peer. Cody and I joked that he went with us to Homer Hickam High School and he shattered his pelvis trying to run a crossing route, and that's why he got into coaching. But he's at his own alma mater. He's awoken the sleeping giant that exists in the Valley of the Sun. But is Arizona State going to pay him what he's worth? And the coach that he reminds me the most of that I think could potentially do this was, remember Jonathan Smith was doing just such an incredible job there at Oregon State. I mean, he was winning Civil War, or what Cody and I call the strife aquatic between the Beavers and Ducks. But eventually, like, he had to go. Oregon State was about to be left for dead in realignment. He went to Michigan State, where he's getting the basketball money from Matt Ishbia, who owns the Suns, and then you got Dan Gilbert, who owns the Cavaliers. They're funneling a bunch of money into those programs, and I think eventually he'll get it going. But like Dillingham is going to get paid a lot from Arizona State. I don't know if it's going to be right away, but if it's not, then like, I mean, if Auburn opens up, I mean, he's had coaching success there too. He's also working at a place like Oregon. So you've got two traditional powers that he's got strong ties to that could conceivably open up in time. I'm not saying Dan Lanning will, but what if Dan Lanning's the new Cowboys coach in a couple of years? And he has to get the kiss star over his wife's eye on his rib tat. Yeah, that would be utterly frightening. But yeah, I think Kenny Dillingham's certainly on the fast track to making a lot of money. At number five, the last one I have in the article is Matt Rule. The reason I had him on here is because like this is the Matt Rule pop year, and when you're in the midst of that, you're going to win like 10 games at a place like Temple. You're going to win the Big 12 at a place like Baylor, or you're going to get fired at a place like Carolina Panthers. Cody and I and a lot of other people are pretty high in Nebraska this year. We think that Dylan Raiola being there in Daniel Holgerson's offense for another year is to his advantage. The other big thing is like the soft tummy that exists in the Big Ten. I mean, beyond Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon, you can pick any number of schools who could take advantage of the situation and be the number four team vying for a playoff spot. We saw that last year with Indiana, who I think will be in contention for it as well. But you're looking at Nebraska. A lot of people are really high in Illinois, including me. Michigan's not going to be down for long. Maybe Iowa impresses people with Mark Gronowski coming in from South Dakota State to be the Hawkeyes quarterback. And then maybe Michigan State turns it around pretty quickly. It's not going to be Wisconsin. It's absolutely not going to be Maryland. But I kind of feel that like Matt Rule could take advantage of the situation. I know he sucks all the air out of the room, loves the sound of his own voice more than Shane Beamer. But like, if Auburn opens up, I think he'd be a candidate. Maybe he goes to Oklahoma if that opens up. Florida, like there's other jobs out there that I think Matt Rule's cachet could conceivably work because he wins everywhere he kind of goes. So this is another shot in the dark where like I think it might happen because of the time and circumstances at all. Now I'm going to look at the ones that I did not include in the article. This is a special false start one here. Also, shout out to, I believe your name is Burkett for subscribing to the show. I really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for the follow. We're really getting there. We got a very Phil Negro 35 going. Gonna throw like a knuckleball. You know, I used to throw a knuckleball like this. I would pitch as opposed to like this. Nobody's ever taught me anything with pitching. I just figured it out. It's a shame. Yeah, a lot of horrible coaches growing up. Pitch with my arm, not my legs. Swam with my arm, not with my legs. Even though I have big legs because I'm a lacrosse player too. But yeah, anyway, moving on to the second half of this segment here with the six head coaches that I think could potentially make 10 million annually. Next one up I had was Lane Kiffin. I went back and forth with him and Matt Rule for this. Kind of surprised Lane Kiffin doesn't make that already. He's been a fantastic head coach at Ole Miss, but we have to wonder, is he at the Rebels ceiling there? We thought that playoff expansion and the SEC doing away with divisions was going to help Ole Miss more than anybody. And they lost to the team in the SEC that hurt the most anybody in Kentucky to basically not make the playoffs. So Kiffin, I think, could potentially take over a place like Auburn, Florida. Honestly, I think he might leave for Nebraska. I mean, when he was born, his late father, Monty Kiffin, was on the Cornhusker staff. I think either maybe under Tom Osborne, Bob Devaney, whatever, just Nebraska legends. So I think that that would be a pretty good fit there as well. But again, I think that Matt Rule would actually act and leave a little bit more than Kiffin. I think Kiffin has a little more self-awareness than Matt Rule, which is shocking to say given what Lane Kiffin's done in his coaching career. At number seven, I've got Matt Campbell. I think this is one of those situations where I don't know if Iowa State's ever going to pay him 10 million, but if Sherrone Moore sucks, Michigan will. Or if what if Matt Rule doesn't work at Nebraska, Troy Dannon will. Or if Auburn, Florida, the one I think that would be really good, and the one place that I would think that Matt Campbell would leave for, that'd be USC. I think he'd be fantastic leading the Trojans. Get back to a blue collar ethos. I know they've kind of looked at him before. You get past the glitz and glamour of Lincoln Riley to get down to some nitty gritty football. I think this would be a hire that would get the people like Troy Polamalu and Carson Palmer pretty fired up about Trojans football again. Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, even more so than Lincoln Riley. So I think Matt Campbell could potentially go, but at the same time, I'm like, every year that we're really high in Iowa State, they disappoint. Every year that we're kind of down, they do the same. There's always one team in every league like that. It's Mizzou in the SEC. It's North Carolina State in the ACC, and then I guess the Big Ten. What's the Big Ten one that always does this to me? That just drives me absolutely crazy. That's a great one. Honestly, well, Iowa's probably the closest to that because like they'll have a great year every so often, and then they won't. So, but yeah, Matt Campbell, I've got at seven. At number eight, I've got Hugh Freeze. What if he does win at Auburn? Then he merits a big extension. They've made DJ Durkin the highest paid defense, one of the highest paid defensive coordinators in college football. I think he's number two behind Jim Knowles at Penn State after leaving Ohio State. And this was to basically prevent DJ Durkin from getting poached to Penn State. Again, like Hugh Freeze and DJ Durkin, yeah, that's just two really upstanding individuals on that coaching staff, and that's just Auburn sports for you. But if he does win and he does go about 8-4, and you got also got to remember, Auburn gets Georgia and Alabama at home. This could be one of those years where Auburn just like ends up winning the SEC or playing for an SEC championship. It's been a while since 2017, but like we know it's in them. That's Auburn football for you. It's a roller coaster ride of emotions. That's why people say God's an Auburn fan. And then at number nine, I've got Billy Napier at Florida for similar reasons to Freeze, where it's like, well, what if it works? I think I think Napier is tighter with his AD, Scott Strickland, than what Hugh Freeze is with John Cohen. Again, two guys that had former ties being at Mississippi State before. Um, I think Florida's got a really tough schedule. Florida wins like 8 or 9 games. You got to give Billy Napier top tier money. It sounds crazy, but like that schedule is so insane. But if you go out there and you beat Tennessee, you beat Georgia, you beat LSU, you beat Texas, you beat LSU, you got so many traditional powers on the hardest schedule in the country. I mean, you got like nothing. I mean, like you play Long Island and then South Florida, which again is like, in-state quasi rival, if you will. There's a lot of opportunities there on the schedule for Napier to make his hay. And then at number 10, I've got Brent Venables just because I think Joe Castiglione likes to give this dude money for some reason. Let's say Oklahoma, is like Florida and navigates a really tough schedule to win about 9 games. Same thing with Freeze. And I kind of rank these like 8, 9, 10 and the likelihood of it happening. Um, I just think Freeze is just a far better and a more proven head coach than Napier and Venables. Napier favors the offensive side of the ball, Venables defense, and I guess Freeze's offense as well. But it would not shock me if one of those three got 10 million in annual value next year, and it would not shock me if one or the other two got fired. And that's kind of what I got there for TIN 10. So going to move on to our next topic here with some great, you can be on our team. This is probably the one that topic that I was nervous about doing because like I'm scheduling this a little bit advanced to get ready for Phoenix. So Stanford's got to find a new head coach. They got to replace Troy Taylor, who Andrew Luck fired as the football GM. This is also a program, an athletic department without an athletic director in Bernard Muir. It was weird when he resigned. And like he won a bunch of athletics directors cups. Maybe this had something to do with the investigations into Troy Taylor. But I believe Grant Hughes of 247 Sports put out a list of 8 candidates to potentially take over the Stanford Cardinal program. And I wrote about this for fanside.com, I think on Thursday, shortly before the episode went live. And I'm going to talk about the 8 candidates here, who I like, who I don't like, and what could conceivably happen. So I'm going to go alphabetically. We're going to go with Bobby April the third. He is their current defensive coordinator. Had been on Troy Taylor's staff, having coming over from Wisconsin. I believe he was the linebackers coach under well, I guess Paul Christ before Jim Leonard took over as the interim, and then it went to Luke Fickell. This would kind of be like, to put a bandage on cancer, if you will. I will say though, if Stanford has done anything right the last 2 years besides go 3-9 and get rid of Taylor, is they've been pretty opportunistic defensively. They're forcing turnovers, and I think that that's an area where they could build the team behind. They got to figure out quarterback play. They got to get back to being an exciting offense full of smart dudes. Maybe April could conceivably be that, but my biggest concern here about that is you're still leaving the remnants of what kind of the Troy Taylor culture around, and you can't have that at Stanford. You got to find somebody else. So I'd be okay with that one, but like not super crazy about it. My favorite hire would potentially be Troy Calhoun, the Air Force Falcons head coach. Again, I don't know if he'd leave. He did play football at Air Force. He was quarterback there. And everyone's like, "Oh, is Stanford going to become a triple option team?" No, I don't. I don't actually think so. I don't think so at all. I think really like you got to remember he was NFL offensive coordinator back in '06 for the Houston Texans. Like you gotta throw the ball. I think that might have been when I don't know if Matt Schaub was quite there yet, but at that era of Texans football, couldn't have been possibly been David Carr then. Who knows? Who cares? But I think that like he would go it because like it's an opportunity for him to be a Power Four head coach. I think also when you're coaching at the Air Force Academy because you're at a military school, you have to play different teams across the country and a bit more of a national scope. Like you got to play Army in out of New York, you got to play Navy out of Maryland, and obviously you're headquartered in Colorado. You're also in a similar enough geographic region. You're not that far away from California, but you're not particularly close. I also think that like he'd appreciate the challenge of doing it, and I've long thought he was ready for a powerful or opportunity. And I mean, you saw what happened with San Jose State. Like Kenui Matalolo took over for Brent Brennan after being, on Chip Kelly's staff at um, UCLA after being let go at Navy. They're throwing the ball a little bit more, so maybe it'll kind of be like that. But I think Troy Calhoun would bring in a really good culture, a disciplined culture. It'd be really exciting. That'd be my favorite hire. The sexy hire would be Jason Garrett next. He's the former Dallas Cowboys head coach, New York Giants offensive coordinator, former Cowboys quarterback, played quarterback at Princeton, calls games for NBC and works in the booth for NBC as well. It would take a program like this for him to take it. I mean, he's interviewed with Stanford. I think he was the runner-up to Taylor the last time this went around. He was also the runner-up for the Duke job that ultimately went to Mike Elko over him and Jim Knowles. So I think that Garrett could potentially come in. I think that would work. He could develop quarterbacks. Uh, I think it would actually work. But again, I think it's you're kind of wondering if you're getting a little too removed from like not only just Stanford culture, because yes, you'd be doing that with Troy Calhoun, but you're also like you haven't coached in like 5 years, man. I mean, we saw that happen with Herm Edwards come in after not coaching, and then he goes to Arizona State, and it just didn't work out. But honestly, this is an outside of the box sort of idea. Maybe it works out for Stanford, but we'll see. We'll see with this. Another one that I think could be interesting is Cliff Kingsbury, the Washington Commanders offensive coordinator, former head coach at the Arizona Cardinals, at his alma mater of Texas Tech. He also was the OC there, Texas A&M, when Johnny Manziel was his quarterback. So to date, he's worked with, I think he's actually, God, he's worked with three Heisman winners and the greatest quarterback of all of his generation. So he's worked with Johnny Manziel, he's worked with Jaden Daniels, he's worked with Kyler Murray, and he's worked with Patrick Mahomes. So he knows quarterbacks. And whenever Stanford's good, they've got a great quarterback, whether that would be Andrew Luck, whether that would be Kevin Hogan, whether that would be what is it? Not that dead. It's Davis Mills. Like they've had guys like this, mostly Andrew Luck, but that's neither here nor there. I'll talk about another guy here in a second who I think checks that box as well. But he gives Stanford an offensive identity, and I think kind of in a way, I think going air raid at a place where there's, trying to think what the word is, like there's challenges of getting people in. Stanford's regularly the only Power Four school that does not fill out its scholarship allotment because they cannot get enough of their players to qualify in recruitment. So, great you can be at our team, but I think this has the potential to work. Honestly, I'd stick with Dan Quinn. I'd ride it out with Jay Daniels for the next 2 or 3 years. And if the right head coaching opportunity opens up in the NFL, then you go for it. Because Dan Quinn did that after failing in Atlanta. He was on Mike McCarthy's staff in Dallas, could have been the head coach of the Bears, could have been the head coach of the Broncos, a couple of other teams. Then the Commanders opened up. He's like, you know what? At the number two pick, we're going to take Jay Daniels. And it's going to be awesome. And it is. Would not shock me if Washington won the NFC next year and went to the Super Bowl. So I'm okay with this one. Again, there's a lot of interesting opportunities here for these head coaches. Kingsbury is kind of a boomer bust sort of one. Very high floor, very low ceiling. Moving on to the second half of this with number five, alphabetically, that would be Derek Mason, the one guy I don't want them to hire. My reasoning for this is because, like, he's not really, he's already at Middle Tennessee right now. He needs to reinvent himself in the exurbs of Nashville after failing at Vanderbilt. Had some success there. I loved when he beat Tennessee regularly at that job, but like it got weird on him very quickly. You've seen how like the program started to turn around under Clark Lee. Mason was not a great fit, and Mason was kind of like one of those like assistants who people thought really highly of under David Shaw. They thought when he left that he was the secret sauce defensive coordinator from Stanford going to Vanderbilt to replace James Franklin. In reality, the secret sauce was Mike Bloomgren, who left for Rice, and maybe I hire Mike Bloomgren over him. I don't know why he wasn't a candidate on here. I would be higher on him than Mason. I think Mason's the one guy I don't want them to hire. The other three, we got Chris Peterson, the former Washington Huskies and Boise State head coach. Again, that'd be a great hire if you can get him, but he hasn't coached in a long time. I mean, we saw Jimmy Lake fail, and we've seen Kalen DeBoer come and gone, and we see Jed Fish. So it's been a minute since he's coached at UW. He's been working for Fox Sports in the analyst area, and I think Stanford would be intriguing for him in the sense that like it's a different kind of job, but also like the sports changed. NIL is a factor now, and the cross country travel, being in the ACC, he's a very much a West Coast guy. I don't know, man. Like if you could get him, that'd be amazing, but I'm kind of doubtful of this. Another guy that I think actually would be a really good fit would be the last two guys are Stanford alums. We got a Tavita Pritchard, the Washington Commanders quarterbacks coach, and then the quarterback before Andrew Luck, and then a Stanford legendary wide receiver Troy Walters, who is the wide receivers coach for Cincinnati Bengals. Pritchard, I think, is more likely to leave than Walters because I think that it's going to be easier for him to be a head coach going back to college as opposed to being an offensive coordinator. Like maybe they do promote him from within if Cliff Kingsbury becomes a head coach next year, but you don't know. Um, Maybe Dan Quinn will learn his lesson. They could promote the quarterbacks coach as opposed to letting Matt LaFleur leave and go to the Titans. You imbecile. Yeah, that would have been great for us. But Sark was good too. But man, Matt LaFleur, yeah, that would have been the better fit there. And then with Walters, like he's coaching up the best wide receiving crew in the NFL and the Bengals with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And I think I've seen a lot of guys like leave being position coaches to go back and coach in college. Again, this is kind of what David Shaw did. I think he was with like the Raiders and Ravens and stuff like that. What God, Kirk Ferentz did that back in the day at Iowa. He was the offensive line coach for the Ravens. But I just kind of feel that like the Bengals are going to have a really good season. I think the Commanders are going to have a really good season. It wouldn't shock me if either of them did it. I think it would have to be like Andrew Luck kind of begging them to do it. Be a huge step up in profile for both of them. But like I think it's more likely that it's going to be Pritchard versus Walters because I don't know, just you really want to walk away from Jamar Chase and T. Higgins right now. But then again, all the Aldermoder's calling. So what can you do? Moving on to our second half of our show here with You Missed Your Mark. You missed your mark. Mike Gundy, Oklahoma State head coach. What did he do? He put it out there that maybe the Bedlam series should continue as a spring game because it's no longer on the schedule for the Cowboys versus Oklahoma. Oklahoma plays in the SEC. Oklahoma State plays in the Big 12. They've got 9 conference games. Oklahoma's got 8. You just figure it out. Figure out how to play it. Talking about, making it like a home and home, just try to get back on the schedule, charge $25 a head, use that money to help fund NIL. It's not the worst idea in the world, but like I'd much rather see that game be played. So this also comes on the heels of the FBS saying that it's like that Colorado and Syracuse cannot do their spring game like Deion Sanders and Fran Brown wanted to. It maybe can happen as soon as next year. I think it's more about the timing of it all. So maybe we could see something like that, inter-squad scrimmages. Be a big opportunity for Colorado to continue to stay in the spotlight. Another opportunity for Syracuse to elevate its brand a little bit more. But so I looked at this and I'm like, the article that I wrote was, what games, including Bedlam, could be reignited in the spring that, rivalries that we haven't seen in a while. So I'm going to work my way from 8 to 1 here. And so here's what I got going on here with this. So the number 8 one that I thought would be cool would be to bring back Keg of Nails, between Cincinnati and Louisville. This is a rivalry where they're both along like the Ohio River. I think Ohio State or Cincinnati is just north of it, and Louisville's just south of it. These two teams used to compete in the Metro and basketball independence, and they were Big East stuff. And then obviously Louisville eventually went to the ACC, and then it took a while there, but Cincinnati got to go to the Big 12. Keg of nails is such a cool thing. It's literally just a keg full of nails, and it's got the bear cat paw, and it's got the cardinal face on it. It's cool. It's really cool. We call it the Satterfield Bowl. I mean, because Scott Satterfield literally left Louisville for Cincinnati when they were playing each other at the Wasabi Fenway Bowl of all places. Yeah, they played at Fenway Park, or their sidelines were touching in a bowl game when it was cold outside, and I don't know. I just think that this game needs to happen more. If again, all of these if they happen in the spring, like okay, they need to happen again. But this is a rivalry that they've played recently. I think back like 22, but like they're not they. This is the one that's kind of an outlier on here. Like the other ones have been played like hundreds of times, and this one's been played like 54 times. But I'm in favor of this. I think this would be a cool rivalry to kind of see come back into it again. Kentucky or Louisville's got to play Kentucky and Cincinnati. I mean, they don't have one yet. I mean, they got to play a 9 game conference schedule. Do you play Ohio State with regularity now? Maybe you play Louisville. I think Louisville. These are two evenly matched programs. They got a lot of overlap. I think this is good. Also, I think Desmond Ritter, former Falcons great, played at Cincinnati. Was from Louisville. At number 7, I've got Battle of the Rag. Hell yeah, LSU versus Tulane. They haven't played this game since like 99. They've played it over 100 times. Back in the day, Tulane was a member of the SEC, but then they kind of de-emphasized athletics down the stretch, and they kind of went into football purgatory for a bit. They've recently reinvented themselves under Willie Fritz and now under John Sumrall. And LSU, I think, like, look, they need to play somebody. I'm of the belief that everybody in the SEC who is not Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, or Kentucky, who already have an in-state rival in the Power Four, they got to play annually. Like the other 12 schools got to find somebody. And I'll talk about that here in a minute. Like, I don't have Texas Tech on here, but like that should be who Texas plays. You got Bedlam. Then that needs to happen. I got a handful of them on here, but this is probably one that's, again, it's not quite Power Five, but I mean, would it shock you if Tulane joined the ACC or the Big 12 in the next couple of years? No. Uh, big time, just a big time academics, cool city in New Orleans. They're making a big point with athletics. Also, you're playing for the Tiger Rag, which is like, I don't know if it's a song or a cloth, but like they're playing for something. And yeah, let's get that going. Let's get something going really good there for Louisiana. At number six, I've got Cal UCLA. Again, this one doesn't have like a nickname for it, but like these are the two flagships public schools in the state of California. Again, I don't know if it's like the state system or the Cal system. Whatever, it's all wonky, it's confusing, and I'm never gonna live in California, so who cares? But like with realignment, with UCLA going to the Big Ten and Cal going to the ACC, this rivalry in state that was played annually and was protected by the Pac-12, like all four Pac-12, all four California schools in the Pac-12 played each other. This had to go away. And again, I think with travel being such an issue for both of these schools, that this is a way for like them to at least have one game, another game in state. If it's home or away, it's not going to be that far. That'll help them out a bunch. And I mean, but like UCLA is going to keep playing USC, Cal's going to keep playing Stanford, but I like to see this one happen. Number five, the Battle of the Brazos. Texas A&M versus Baylor. The Brazos River flows both through or near College Station and Waco. Play this one off several times, like over 100. These were both like schools that were, not only were they in the um, the Big 12 with the merger of that and the Big Eight, and they were also like the four schools from Texas who made their way into the Big 12 from the Southwest. So it was Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, and Baylor back in the day. Baylor was not really equipped to compete at the Big 12 at that point. They were just not. They were at such an resources disadvantage. It's changed a lot now in recent years, but I would say that like this needs to happen. They haven't played this since 2011. And as I'm going through all this, like the two schools that I'm just the most mad about is Texas A&M and Missouri. And I'll talk about this when we get to Missouri here in a little bit. You know what I'm talking about at some point. Like they've abandoned all their rivals from like the Big 12 and Big 8 and Southwest. And they've picked up new ones. Like I would say A&M's got big rivalries there with, they're reunited a new one with Arkansas, in the Southwest Classic. Texas obviously comes over, and then they've got a pretty interesting one brewing with LSU. So they have other ones, but this would be a cool one to add back to it. Um, Obviously Baylor ends up they got TCU's kind of replaced that as it's been reignited a bit. They were old Southwest foes. TCU replaces what I guess A&M and West Virginia replaced Missouri, if you will, for lack of a better word. But yeah, this needs to happen. Number four, the Keystone Classic. Like this is stupid. Like I didn't even know this is what it was called, but yeah, I'm talking about Penn State versus Pitt. They used to play all the time, and then like they've played a couple of times like in the last 10 years, like 16, 17, and 19, but like they're both like Penn State was independent for a while. Pitt was too, but they were in the Big East, and then obviously Penn State was in the Big Ten. The Big Ten's got nine conference games. The ACC's got eight. Look, it doesn't help Penn State to put Pitt on the schedule and lose. That hurts them. Just like it does to potentially lose. Whereas like if like Pitt would rather have like another easy win and then handle their own with the eight in the ACC. But like, look, Pitt's always going to prioritize the backyard brawl with West Virginia. I think they're going to try to play that more regularly now. I think that's become a point of emphasis that's taken up a lot of airspace. That's a rivalry that was um really sad as well. And that If I got a message from the Arizona State podcast, got to figure this out as well. But anyway, yeah, Penn State, like who's the big rival in the Big Ten? Is it Ohio State, Michigan State, I guess they're probably there too. I feel like you could add another one there. Again, like Penn State's still relatively new to the Big Ten, and all things considered, they've only been there for about like 25, 30 years or so. So I like to see this one played more often. At number three, I've got Stanford USC. This is the other side of Cal UCLA. Obviously, Stanford goes to the ACC, USC goes to the Big Ten. Played annually against, it's the same sort of thing, but it has just a little bit more gravitas than Cal and UCLA. So that's why I've got it at three. At number two, I have Bedlam. The reason I've got Bedlam at number two is because like it's a hammer versus nail rivalry. Like Oklahoma wins all the time and Oklahoma State wins hardly any of the time. It's just really petty that they can't make this work. Like, I mean, there's a plenty of what like Iowa still finds a way to play Iowa State every year. You know, Georgia's got to play Georgia Tech every year. So Clemson's got to play South Carolina, Kentucky, Louisville, Florida, Florida State. You find ways to make it work. And this is pathetic. They just need to figure it out and stop being so sad. Maybe if Gundy's asking for this, then it's I think he's afraid that he might not get to play another or coach another Bedlam at some point. Like again, he's one of the most important people in Oklahoma State football history. He played quarterback in the 80s, threw for a lot of yards, but mostly handed the ball off to Thurman Thomas and Barry Sanders. We also saw like, he's been the coach there since 2005, replacing Les Miles. He's the guy who was a man who was once 40. Back in 2011, he would have made the playoff because Oklahoma State would have been the three seed or would have been the two seed. It would have been Alabama, LSU, Oklahoma State, and Stanford that year. And they got to figure this out. And, but the one that number one without question is border war between Kansas and Missouri. There are no excuses. Look, Missouri in their decade or so in the SEC has not really been able to develop a rivalry. They've been trying. They've been trying, Jennifer, but it hasn't worked. And I think what was David Ubben of The Athletic probably said it best. He's like, they're trying to sell us the border or battle line with Arkansas and Missouri. He's like, look, I went to Mizzou. My family went to Arkansas. Like, Arkansas hates Texas and Mizzou hates Kansas. The fact that this game's not being played every year is despicable. It would be a quality game for both fan bases. It's like one of the games where like there have been years where Mizzou has been really good. There's been years where Kansas has been pretty good. And like Kansas still has like Sunflower with Kansas State, but like who else is like the rival in the on football in the Big 12? Mizzou, they beat Georgia once over a decade ago. You got like the Battle of Columbia there with South Carolina, who doesn't have a lot of rivals either. Maybe you try to group. Well, they'll play for the Tiger, or they'll play for the Peace Pipe again with Oklahoma. So that's when it's going to be rekindled as well. So maybe that's good. But like Mizzou, like they had rivalries with Kansas. They had rivalries with Iowa State. They had rivalries. They had so many, and it just all went away. I just kind of feel that like the reason I said this one was you missed your mark is because like it's very just Big 12 to basically have a rivalry game be played in spring ball as opposed to actually putting it on your schedule. But that being said, I do want to see Border War. I do want to see Bedlam Series. I do want to see Stanford USC. I want to see the Keystone Classic, the Battle of the Brazos, Cal UCLA, the Battle of the Rag, and the Keg of Nails all be played again. But like baby steps. Maybe we'll get there one day. I hope it's in the regular season. Moving on to our penultimate topic number five, which is some group of five for fighting here. Kenni Burns and his one win at Kent State has been placed on administrative leave. I did a little research on this, looking around here. Apparently, Burns is in massive credit card debt and apparently is trying to like fudge his taxes a little bit. And they're looking into this. And I think I saw somewhere that like famous Kent State alums, Julian Edelman and Josh Cribbs, Kent State legends, potentially looking at replacing him. Kenni Burns, former Indiana running back, I think he was the running backs coach in Minnesota prior to coming over to Kent State. I don't know who they're going to bring in at some point, but like it's been an absolute disaster. It's been one of the worst hires I've ever seen. For a guy to be there for 2 years and to go 1-23 is pathetic. I mean, Sean Lewis hasn't been great at San Diego State and wasn't particularly good at Colorado, but he won games at Kent State. I mean, he had them going bowling. Again, this is the worst program in FBS, worst resource, worst in the MAC. But like we've also seen greatness be bred out of this. This is the alma mater of Julian Edelman. This is the alma mater of Josh Cribbs. This is the alma mater of James Harrison. What Antonio Gates played basketball there. Nick Saban played there. Jack Lambert was his roommate, played there. Don James coached there. You can find things that happen here there at Kent State and Kent, Ohio, but it's not looking good for Kenni Burns at all. And this is also going to potentially be the third head coach at FBS that's going to be replaced like spring. We saw Scott Leffler leave to go be the Eagles quarterbacks coach, allowed Eddie George to leave Tennessee State to come take over there at Bowling Green. We saw Troy Taylor get fired at Stanford. I've obviously mentioned the 8 candidates who could potentially replace him. Like they did this during spring practice. And obviously, right now, we may be on the horizon there with that at Kent State. Maybe they just go with the interim for the year and then really do a long and thorough search. Yeah, it's so brutal, man. But like, I kind of wonder like what you would be looking for at a program like Kent State. I think you got to go with a guy who's I think you got to go with a former head coach again. I think you tried it with a position coach. You try to do it with a guy who was a former star in the Big Ten, and it just didn't work out from the region. Maybe you look at Mike Bloomgren. I mean, maybe you look at trying to think who else out there. Group of five head coach. I don't know if there's any. I don't know if there's any former Power Four head coaches that would take this. I think you want to try Nick Saban. Nick Saban would never do it. Miss Cherry would never let that happen, even if it is alma mater. Honestly, let Julian Edelman do it. Who cares at this point? Kent State's terrible. But obviously, with what's going on with Kenni Burns, that's a little more frightening. And I just had to mention this on the program before we moved on to our last topic, which is some Big Ten energy, or a guy who doesn't really have any Big Ten energy. That would be Gary Danielson, who has announced that he's going to be retiring at the end of the 2025 season from calling games for CBS. I read this interesting article about this on ESPN. I was sitting there thinking like, oh, as soon as he gets Big Ten games up there, calling games where his alma mater of Purdue played in, like it's just not going to be as good as the SEC. But I think this was also part of it. They wanted him to be there for the transitional period of going from the Big Ten to the SEC to the Big Ten, excuse me, and coverage. Obviously, they replaced Vern Lundquist not that long ago with Brad Nessler. And obviously, I grew up with Vern and Gary calling games for CBS. The CBS game always kind of felt bigger. That was obviously whenever Georgia, Florida would play. If you were the 3:30 CBS game, that was a huge deal. You'd obviously see third Saturday in October played there a bunch, Alabama, LSU, you name it. But even though I don't really necessarily think I'm not the biggest fan of Gary Danielson, I don't think anybody is, and I don't think Vern Lundquist is as good as people said he was. Um, those games certainly meant a lot, and honestly, it doesn't feel the same with it's going to the Big Ten. Like maybe you have opportunities to go to more new interesting venues, but like it just doesn't carry the same cachet as the SEC. But the SEC is doing just fine. They got the SEC on ABC at prime time. You pretty much got the best uh the best team out there with Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit calling games. So that feels bigger. So I was looking into this a little bit more. Like, okay, well, Gary Danielson's like 74. He played in the NFL for like 11 years, for like the Lions, most notably played at Purdue, former quarterback. I'm like, who's going to replace him? Apparently, it's going to be Charles Davis. Yes, the voice of Madden and probably the voice of a college football game at some point too. He calls games with Ian Eagle there for CBS, the number two behind Tony Romo and Jim Nance. I think they're going to move him up to the number one, put him with Brad Nessler. But the big thing is they got to find Ian Eagle, a right guy to call games with. It looks like it's going to be TJ Watt leaving the desk, with that has James Brown, Bill Cowher, Matt Ryan, and but I think Nate Burleson's on there too, I think. But like he may, I've known Matt Ryan's called a couple of games too. But like they think they're going to try to groom TJ Watt to do it. I think that'd be interesting to have a guy who's one of the best defensive players of my generation. Again, he's like a year older than me. calling games in the NFL. But I know Charles Davis could do a fantastic job because you have to remember, like he didn't really have an NFL career. He was like undrafted player or a seventh round pick. Played at Tennessee in the '80s. But I think this is a guy that I think is going to add a certain level of expertise to it. But the one thing that I go back to that's really strange in all this is like you're gonna have a guy who played in the Big Ten calling only SEC games, and you're gonna have a guy who played in the SEC calling only Big Ten games. What can I say, man? We are living in a simulation. This was episode 163 of False Start. You can follow me, John Buhler, on Twitter or the X at Buhler118. You can follow my absent-minded, absent co-host Cody Williams at the Sizzle 20. You can follow the show at CFB False Start. Like, rate, listen, subscribe, review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere there's podcasts. Give us a 5-star review. Really helps the show grow. You do that on Apple, do it anywhere. Spotify, doesn't matter. 5 stars, the better. Yeah, like I said, I recorded this on Saturday afternoon. This is going to come out a day later on Sunday afternoon. This is going to serve as the Monday show. So if anything happens in the Stanford coaching search, Kenni Burns or whatnot, like, man, I'm sorry, but like that's just how life goes. I want to make sure you guys had something to listen to or follow along with during the week. Again, Cody and I will be back on Friday. I most certainly will be. We'll see if Cody is. Again, like he flies back from Phoenix to Albuquerque a little bit later than I fly back from Atlanta. I got to get up at the ass crack of dawn every day. Dogs or flights or whatever. It's just how it goes. But once again, thanks for listening. And this is False Start.